The number 7 is especially prominent in the Bible, appearing over 700 times, from the 7 days of creation to the many sevens in Revelations. The number 7 connotes concepts such as completion and perfection and the fulfillment of promises and oaths. So, what about Paradise Lost? What sense of completion, what fulfillment of promises shall we achieve at this juncture? Let Milton solve this riddle of 7 for us, because now we are going to look very closely at what we have seen is that Milton does not invoke his muse at the beginning of all his books in Paradise Lost. But in book 7, we do have an invocation of the muse. And this is going to be the vital point which we should keep in mind, because this muse is named here as Urania. So let's just look at the basic idea of Milton's muse in book 7. In the invocation, he is summoning Urania, the Greek muse of astronomy, and then he conflates Urania with the Holy Spirit. And somehow he is describing Urania as heavenly born. So first he defines his muse in a way, and then he seeks some kind of assistance. What assistance does he seek from Urania in this book? He asks for protection from false beliefs, and he wants to be inspired to tell the truth. Now, what is interesting is that Urania is supposed to be the muse of scientific knowledge, and she is also a very feminine presence here. In the earlier invocations, like we had them in book 1, in book 3, there was some doubt about the gender of the muse, all right, whether it was a masculine muse or a feminine muse. But in the 7th book, by specifying the name Urania, Milton is kind of putting a stamp on the gender of his muse, and it is essentially a feminine gender. And then that is not surprising, is it? Because book 7th is going to be all about the creation, a kind of birth. So Milton does need the figure of a motherly muse who is going to assist him in describing this creation. So what happens after the invocation? We had seen Adam and Raphael conversing with each other in the previous book. So they are still continuing their conversation. Adam is grateful, and at the same time he's curious. He thanks Raphael for his tale and asks Raphael about the creation of the world. But then he is doubtful whether being curious is right or not. He has these questions that, is it okay to be curious? Because somehow he has understood that God doesn't want him to overstep, to transgress anything. So he is very conscious about following God's orders, but he still has this curiosity in him to know about things. And then he says, if unforbid, thou mightst unfold. So he wants Raphael to unfold, to tell him things, but he wants him not to break any rules. Okay, so he wants to play safe. And then he says, what we not to explore, the secrets ask. So he is conscious about the fact that he is asking things which might appear as overstepping, and he doesn't want to break any rules as yet. So Adam is the safe player here. Raphael assures him that creation story is not something that he's supposed to keep away from mankind. It's not a secret to mankind. And he also warns that, okay, you can have this desire for knowledge, but you should also have temperance. What is temperance? Temperance is the quality which makes a person have a control over his actions, because sometimes when we know things, we tend to act in a certain way. Sometimes we become aggressive, we lose the ability to control ourselves. So temperance is that ability. So Raphael wants Adam to behave with temperance. And he then says, but knowledge is as food, and needs no less her temperance over appetite. Now, it's like food, it's a very nice thing when you eat, but if you go on eating without stopping, what would happen? So, temperance will provide you with that kind of control which would actually save you from overeating. To know in measure what the mind may well contain, oppresses else with surfeit. Surfeit is the feeling that, okay, I've had enough. That feeling saves us from overeating. That feeling saves us from torturing ourselves with more food than we actually need. Knowledge is just like that. And temperance is required to stop from overachievement of knowledge. And soon turns wisdom to folly as nourishment to wind. And then he begins the creation story. So, how does he start talking about creation? He makes this analogy with food, and then he goes on to talk about how God decided to create things and how things came about. Now, the primary motivation behind creation of this world uh, was that God wanted to somehow refill that vacancy which was taking place because of his son driving away Satan out of heaven with his host of rebel angels. So, well, God needed more followers, more worshippers, and he somehow wanted to have a world which would, on one hand, distract him away from all this unpleasantness of this Satan's business with him, and at the same time would help him have a positive feeling about himself. So God also needs appreciation. God also needs followers, it seems. And how is this new race described? The new race must prove themselves, the race which God created, by degrees of merit before dwelling in heaven. So somehow you had to qualify in some kind of a test before you were allowed access to heaven. Earth and heaven will eventually unite into one kingdom. And this was God's original plan, that I'm creating something which is separate from heaven. Sometimes students have this illusion that paradise is in heaven. Paradise is not in heaven. Paradise is a very much a part of earth. And earth is a separate world. It's not inside heaven. But it was God's plan that eventually there will be a union. The angels, of course, they start praising God for his creation and for bringing good out of evil. What was the sun's role in creation? The sun, who is presented as second in command. Now, it is shown here in Raphael's narration that the sun actually acted in a very instrumental fashion. He actually did the hard work here. First, he emerged from heaven's gates with angels arranged by rank. They are very conscious of ranks, just like human beings are. And then formed the earth out of chaos. So there was chaos. So who formed the earth out of chaos? The sun, like not the father. This is according to Raphael's narration. And then he divided it into night and day, and then declared, "Let there be light," marking the first day of creation. So somehow we can say that the sun is acting as a representation of God in a way. And this probably has something to do with the idea of monism. I have already discussed it earlier with you. The idea of monism, the idea of non duality, like God, Son, everything comes together in this story, which is narrated by Raphael. So let's look at the process of creation. What happens after that? After the first day is created, all angels sing praises, and then a timeline is drawn for us, for Adam. Raphael explains that the creation occurred immediately by God's command, and it occurred over 6 days. All right. And now the concept of days again is born out of the concept of sun and moon. So obviously, after the first light was born, the concept of day should come, or rather, after the sun is born. Sun means sun, the sun which shines, not the sun who blesses. So, after the birth of sun and moon, can we have the concept of day? Right? But here it is seen that Raphael is saying that it took 6 days for the creation to take place, and the timeline begins before the birth of the heavenly bodies like sun and moon. Now you may argue that yes, but he was only talking about 24 hours duration. Fine, I'm not going into that argument here. So let's just look at the timeline that he draws for us. First day, there was this declaration, let there be light. And then the earth was divided into night and day. And I'll just read a little from here. Let there be light, said God, and forthwith light ethereal. Remember who is creating this poem for us? John Milton, a person for whom the most beautiful thing imaginable was light, because he was deprived of it. He was a blind poet. Don't ever forget that. All right. So now you look at these lines and think how he must have felt while composing these lines. Let there be light, said God, and forthwith light ethereal, first of things, quintessence pure, sprung from the deep and from her native east. Now the earth is moving all around the sun, and we all know why the sun rises in the east. But back then, people had this belief that the sun rises in the east and then sets in some ocean in the west. And so the birth of sun was conceived as it was born from the east, and it is said that from her native east to journey through the airy gloom began. So the earth was getting brightened up by the sun. But interestingly, the earth was not yet there. So whose east? The sun was rising from the east. Whose east? That is not told here. It is that the sun was rising from the east. Sphered in a radiant cloud. Nobody knows from where that cloud comes, because we know that clouds come from the water which is there on earth. But see, in the beginning of this book, Milton was trying to invoke the scientific bent of mind through the invocation of Urania, because he thought that Urania could supply him with the knowledge of astronomy that would be required if he wanted to explain the creation, satisfying the contemporary audience or reader. But this is all so confusing, isn't it? For yet the sun was not. So he also says that no, it was not the sun. It was only light. So there was no source, only product. God saw the light was good, and light from darkness by the hemisphere divided. Light the day and darkness night he named. Thus was the first day, even and morn. The angels sang praises. Second day, he divided land from water. Again God said, let there be firmament amid the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament expanse of liquid, pure, transparent, elemental, air, diffuse. The sky was created, and then water was divided from land. So this was shown as a very technical, step-by-step process of creation. The third day brings us to oceans, rivers, and plants. And then God sent rain to make the plants grow. Fourth day was the creation of sun, moon, and stars. So before that, everything else came to existence. Now you might have this question that how can it be possible, because plants depend on the sunlight for their sustenance. Now you are asking this question because you are aware of these things because of the scientific discoveries, inventions that went on happening during the scientific revolution age, which was after the age of Milton. And this was the knowledge available to Milton. And we also have to understand that he wanted to remain as much as possible close to the version which is provided by the Bible. He couldn't create a story out of nothing. He had to base fundamentally on the version that was available in the Bible. And God made two great lights. This is the fourth day. Great for their use to man, as if the sun, moon, they were created so that man could use them. Now, this is the homocentric Renaissance man speaking. It's like man is the center of the universe, homocentric. And somehow, this is a completely opposite spirit to the reformist, Puritan humility that otherwise Milton has. A Puritan will never say that everything is made for the benefit of man. But this is what is told here. So, this is where Milton is seen as the child of both Renaissance and Reformation. Sometimes you have these questions in your assessments that describe Milton as a child of Renaissance and Reformation. These are the places where you can say that his humanist spirit, his Renaissance spirit comes out. And also because he wants to get assistance from a Greek muse in this case, that is Urania. So, this fascination with ancient knowledge of astronomy, this fascination with science in general, this is all part of Renaissance mentality, which we see reflected here in Milton's poetry. Fifth day is about creation of fish, birds, sea creatures, and God said, let the waters, now he had already created waters, and let the waters generate reptile with spawn abundant, living soul, and let fowl fly above earth. So we have some kind of a pseudo-Darwinian evolutionary process described here, although Darwin came much after Milton. But here we see that somehow a sequence is provided to us here, that there were reptiles first and then the fowl, that is birds, fly above the earth with wings displayed on the open firmament of heaven. And God created the great whales, and each soul living, each that crept, which plenteously the waters generated by their kinds, and every bird of wing, and saw that it was good, and blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, and in the seas and lakes and running streams the waters fill. So this was how he created reptiles and birds and as the primary forms of life on earth. Now, there's a movie called Sixth Day where this concept of creation of man is portrayed uh, in terms of ideas like cloning and post-human experimentations. I don't know if you have watched that movie. And this is Sixth Day. So 6 days about creation of beasts, like big like forms of on dry lands in pairs, fully grown and at peace. And these animals which God created, they were not born as kids, small versions or babies, but they were born as full grown, ready to reproduce versions. Uh, and then we see he replaces the biblical phrase, and it was so. Like in the Bible, when you have this description of the sixth day creation, the expression used there is, and it was so. And here it is somehow seen as a kind of self creation. How? Let's see. Look at what Milton does. The earth obeyed. So it's like God commanded earth that, see, you are supposed to do this. What you are supposed to do? Earlier in line 451, God had said, let the earth bring forth fowl living in her kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth, each in their kind. So let the earth do this. What is earth? Earth is nature. So was Milton being a naturalist here? Was he saying that nature created everything because God commanded nature? So these are very interesting, subtle shades that we get out of this book. And then the earth obeyed. Notice this line. And straight opening her fertile womb, teemed at a birth innumerous living creatures, perfect forms, limbed and full grown. So the earth opened up and creatures were born out of it. God did not make them with his own hands. Earth made them. So, what Milton is doing here, you see, earth is a feminine concept. Mother Earth. We don't say Father Earth, although we say fatherland, but usually we refer to our countries as motherland. We refer to the earth as a woman simply because she generates things, produces things, right? So, Milton is transferring the concept of creation from a masculine creator to a feminine creator here. And yes, you can say that earth was commanded by God. So the feminine force is commanded by the masculine force. That is true. But then when she is empowered to produce, then she's not taking any assistance from God. She does this all on her own. So there is a recognition of a female authority here. So Milton, who is always, facing the brunt of feminists that he is misogynistic. Yes, he is. He is. I would not deny that in a thousand words that Milton is misogynistic. But these are the places where we cannot call him a misogynist. We can see him as trying to establish, maybe not consciously, but somehow maybe it slips through him that there is a process of feminine energy transferring into creativity. And this is also very interesting because how was this poem Paradise Lost produced? He dictated, and the female companion, she wrote them down. So he couldn't do it all by himself. The man was not enough. He needed the woman to write it for him. So somehow creation is complete only when there is an equal participation of both masculine and feminine energies. Probably this is some idea that might be there in his mind. Now, this image of the earth opening up her fertile womb actually comes from Ovid's Metamorphosis too. The Now I want you to look at specifically the creation of the lion, how it is described here. The grassy clods now carved, now half appeared the tawny lion. So imagine the scenario. The earth was opening up as if it was her womb, and out of that, a lion was appearing, pawing to get free, just like a baby, puts its head out first and struggles to get out of the mother's womb. The lion is also doing that. Pawing to get free his hinder parts, then springs as broke from bonds, and rampant shakes his brinded mane. Mane is his hair. Now, when the lion springs as brook from bonds, it's a sense that Milton is representing his own springing from what? A scriptural tradition. When he was writing about the creation story, as I was discussing just a few minutes back, he had to stick to the details which were given in the Bible because he said I would be talking about Christianity. But then maybe he was feeling stuck. And this image of the lion, bursting forth with energy, this kind of is very much relatable to the way he also wanted to come out of those scriptural bindings. And see, he doesn't follow the rhyming patterns of heroic poetry. He is creating blank verse. That is his first revolutionary achievement, you can say, breaking the bonds of rhyme. And then the creation of the serpent. You might have this idea that the serpent is evil. But no, when it was created by God, then it was not evil. It became the symbol of evil when Satan chose it as his vehicle, as its medium through which it reached out to Eve. So serpent was as innocent as the lion and the first human that was created. The serpent, subtlest beast of all the field, of huge extent sometimes, with brazen eyes and hairy mane terrific, though to thee not noxious, but obedient at thy call. So the serpent was also a part of this entire ecosystem. And then man was created, and he was set as the governor of everything. He governed everything, and he was not supposed to do this one thing, not to eat from the forbidden tree, fruit of the forbidden tree. And then Raphael, this is Raphael talking to Adam. So whenever he is saying you, that is thee, it means Adam, gave thee all sorts are here that all the earth yields. So everything that is produced by earth is available to Adam. Variety without end, but of the tree which tasted works knowledge of good and evil, thou mayest not. In the day thou eatest, thou diest. Death is the penalty imposed. Beware and govern well thy appetite. So control your curiosity, lest sin surprise thee and her black attendant death. So Raphael reinforces the warning which God had always provided to Adam, that don't eat from that tree. Anyway, so after this creation, the son was very satisfied that I'm very happy with whatever is created. It's entirely good. And he returned to heaven. But there was a connection created, a physical connection between earth and heaven, so that angels could come down to earth, and a possibility of a communion, that man would be able to walk those steps up to heaven, because, well, they did not think that man would fall, right? And then the seventh day, God rested, the Sabbath, right? The seventh day is the day of rest. Angels praise the new creation, and this brings us to the end of Raphael's narration about creation. And then Raphael ends by asking Adam, do you want to know about anything else? So he offers more knowledge. He tries the curiosity of Adam, but we do not see any further discussion in this book itself, right? So this is practically the end of the seventh book, which was a long and detailed narration about the process of creation. So this book is kind of a provisional, a short-term, temporary celebration of feminine creativity. Because why short-term? Why temporary? Because book 8 will bring a strong end to it, and book 9 will completely present Milton as the epitome of misogyny, almost hatred for women. Book 8 itself reasserts the subordination of woman to man. Now, we had already seen that in book 4, haven't we? So, in our next video, when we'll look at the 8th book, we might feel revolted at times by things that Milton writes there. But then again, we are judging the poetic merit. It's not always a sociological treatise that we are looking at, but we cannot deny that poetry is so significant in having an effect in the way identities are imagined in society, that we cannot overlook the responsibility of a poet to. And he's not an ordinary man, he's a poet. So obviously his words would have an impact. And if his words have impact, he should be all the more careful about them. So I'll see you all again in my next video, where we'll look at the 8th book of Paradise Lost before going to the famous 9th book, when the fall actually takes place. I hope you are liking this series, and I'm sure you have also checked out the podcast section of our channel, which we have newly launched, and we have already covered a lot of stories there. So listen to those stories till we meet again in our next video. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye-bye.